growing skills gap. What is the cause of this and how do we remedy it? Hello and welcome to this webinar brought to you by Mining Review Africa on addressing the skill shortage in African mining. My name is Gerard Peter of Mining Review Africa, and I will be your moderator today. Over the next hour, we will take a deep dive into the reasons why the African mining sector faces severe skill shortage and how we can build a skilled workforce needed to support the future of mining. Joining me for today's discussions are Dr. Paseka Liu, who's the head of school at the Wits School of Mining Engineering, Tanya Graham, managing editor of Comodex Consultancy. Sorry, I mean to say managing director of Comodex Consultancy. Haley Dady, who's the global training services manager at Immersive Technologies. Now, before we go on with the panel discussion, a reminder to you, the audience, that you can also take part in this discussion. Simply pop your question into the comment box on the right-hand side of your screen, and we will get one of our panelists to answer it for you. Right, let's get on with the discussion. And Paseka, firstly, thank you for allowing me to call you Paseka and not esteemed doctor. That's really appreciated. I want to start with you, and my question is, what are the root causes of the skill shortage in the African mining sector?
Thank you for the question, Gerard. Look, this question is a bit complex for me, or maybe for anyone that asks these questions. I'll say there are two components to this. One is the skill shortage on the mine or in the mining industry. And then there's also the question of skill shortage in the mineral value chain. So if you look at maybe the first one, the mining industry, generally, one would say, yes, there is a skill shortage. But in the context of South Africa, for example, when you look at the training that the mining engineers that we produce, the geologists, perhaps maybe that is not so much of a concern. When you look at metallurgists that we produce, bit of a concern, but really that's not much to worry about. Is something that in the short term probably that we could overcome. However, the shortage seems to be in the other engineering disciplines that support this core disciplines, which is mining, which is geology, mining, and metallurgy. That's where we seem to be having a shortage, and it's something that we would need to address. But it's not a major concern. The biggest concern for me is when you look at the mineral value chain. In a South African context, this is something that we call beneficiation. Is those skill sets post mining? That's where, for me, the skills shortages is really severe in South Africa, probably in Africa. And then these skills got to do with, really extracting value from the product, the mined products, converting the concentrates that we get out of the mines or the ores that we get into the mines, and then extracting metal from which we'll be able to produce products that are of higher value to the end consumer. That's where the skill shortage is in Africa. And, to answer your question, really, what is it that causes it? Is simply because we don't have enough people coming out of our schools and then or even universities going into the skills, into the STEM industries, because really to be able to extract value, you got to have enough human resource capacity to be able to go into these sectors, to be able to, do manufacturing of the product, extracting ores, developing new materials, in line with the modern technologies and demands. And then this is where I think we're losing.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, Paseka. And Tanya, I want to bring you in on what Paseka just said right now. And, the lack of interest in STEM subjects in the school system. In fact, it's quite concerning, just basic reading skills in primary school is a major concern right now. So my question to you, Tanya, is why is there a lack of interest among young people to pursue a mining career?
Sure, yes, and this is quite a significant one. And we usually see, because of the large numbers currently graduating, it is kind of giving an effect that people is not realizing that this is still not enough people that we are producing into the industry that will be competent, skilled workers within our industry, doesn't matter what engineering department. And to answer your question, the lack of interest it starts with the knowledge that's being shared about mining. I spent now quite a couple of years moving into the industry, pre-workplace exposure areas, and talking to all these young individuals. There's a very clear indication, and not just in South Africa, because we're talking about Africa, and because we work across Africa, this is something we see everywhere, is the knowledge that's being shared and the information regarding mining. We are not always sharing the reality of what does it take to be in mining is the one part of it. So students are studying specifically for mining. I'm talking on the mining engineering side, because that's the majority of the way we focus on the students. And they have absolutely no idea what mining actually means. What are they busy studying for? What is available after they graduate? And what is the directions we go in? And this is another part where we're not sharing of what other opportunities with my mining engineering degree do I have, or mining qualification, it doesn't need to be your mining engineering degree. What is my options in the industry? And of course, the generation we're sitting with now, not all of them dreams about going into the generic operation routes. And mining has changed a lot, and mining is evolving every day, and a lot more opportunities are rising above ground and in new technology and innovation. But these informations are not being shared with our younger generation. And I think there's one part being told about mining when they get introduced to mining, and the reality what they receive when they actually enter mining is two completely different worlds. So I think to get the interest more from young individuals to be excited about mining is understand exactly what mining is about, what your career will look like, and what options do I have as a engineer heading into the mining industry. What will my options be, and what does my future look like? So just in short, to answer there, the lack of interest, I don't think it's the lack of interest. I think it's the lack of information and the correct information currently being shared in the industry that's causing students to rather choose a different route once they actually realize what mining is about, and not physically being prepared for the industry they will be entering.
Absolutely. Now, Tanya, I know that you have created a program to generate more interest in young people in mining careers, but we'll touch on that a bit later. Ellie, I want to bring you into the conversation and just building on from what Tanya has just said. I mean, the mining sector has changed, especially because of technology and the need to mine more sustainably, safer, and responsibly. So, how is digital transformation reshaping skills requirements in the African mining sector?
Thanks, Gerard. So digital transformation is really reshaping skills requirements in a few clear ways. The first thing we see very often with a lot of the clients we interact with is that roles are shifting from manual execution towards system management and critical decision making. So when we look at things like autonomous and digital systems, these mean that operators in particular now need stronger situational awareness and a ability to manage exceptions to the rule rather than just performing repetitive tasks, which historically has been where they'd be more comfortable operating. And secondly, I think there's a much higher expectation on data literacy now. So people across the operation need to be able to interpret performance data, understand variability in terms of performance metrics, and as well as human variability. What is the differences within a team? And then be able to use this information to make better decisions day to day. So it's not just about being able to interact with this information at a surface level, but really to be able to derive insights from the technology that they're interacting with. And then probably the most critical point in my view is that the human side has become more important, not less. The assumption that digital transformation is going to remove the human element from mining is a misnomer. Successful operations build capability in leadership, communication, and structured and well thought out change management processes. In most cases, digital transformation doesn't fail. It's the adoption that is where we see the failure point. So if I look at Africa specifically, the opportunity and the challenge sit in building both foundational and advanced capability at pace. And many sites are progressing at different stages, at different paces. And the focus needs to be on scalable and structured training that aligns people, process, and technology, as that will ultimately enable digital transformation and deliver real operational value, which is the objective behind the digital transformation that we're driving in the industry currently.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, Haley. And we'll touch on the role that immersive technology plays in ensuring that these skills are actually learned and enhanced a bit later. Paseka, I want to bring you back into the conversation here. And let's look at current university and technical and vocational education and training colleges, or TVETs as we know them. Are are these systems aligned with mining industry needs?
Thank you, Jared. Yes, from my perspective, what I've seen, there's a very strong alignment between universities, specifically the universities that produce, engineers, mining engineers, and there's a very strong alignment there. The mismatch or misalignment tends to come in, areas that, or what I call support sectors. For example, as the mines embrace new technologies, put new technologies in their processes, these technologies need to be supported by other disciplines other than mining. And then when you look at this, you started to see pockets where there's really shortages of skills, or perhaps maybe a misalignment in terms of the type of skills that are produced to be able to support the mines. When you look at VETS, VETS University and University of Pretoria, we produce engineers, and then we have University of Pretoria producing mining technologists, and then we have UNISA producing mining technologists and mining technicians. So the definitions of what an engineer or a mining engineer in this case, what a mining technologist and a technician really comes from the classifications as prescribed by EXA, Engineering Council of South Africa, where really an engineer is somebody that looks at the complex problems and then the environment where a technologist operate is in a space where the problems are broadly defined, and a technician is really well-defined problems, and then they operate within the standards and procedures. And then on the mining side, I'm not talking about other forms of engineering, other disciplines of engineering. On the mining side, we tend to see that there's not too many production of technicians, and then perhaps maybe very few in terms of technologists, but we tend to have adequate production of mining engineers. And then in terms of whether these engineers, as they come out of university, they hit the ground running, we are constantly, the head of school, the four head of mining programs at these 4 universities that I've mentioned, we are constantly in contact with various mining industry bodies, just to ensure that we incorporate whatever the changes that are there in an industry into our program, so that we produce these graduates that really, within very shorter space of time, they become productive additions to the human resource in the mining industry.
Okay, thank you for that, Doctor. Tanya, I want to bring you in just based on what Paseka has just said now. I mean, yes, you may develop the curriculum. Yes, you may keep abreast of trends. But, mining relies a lot on experience and expertise. So, in your opinion, is there a gap between what students are learning at a tertiary level and the practical skills needed at the coalface of operations?
So Dr. Liu touched on that and said, on the academic level, the universities are doing their job. We must remember in a space as well, they are employed to do academics, and we cannot expect to add so much pressure on the universities to add in things that is not in their curriculums, that is not part of their job descriptions to do. Their sole purpose is there to make sure we have the most competent, educated engineers, or from the difference, he shared now the difference between the engineering degrees across the 4 universities, to make sure that we have the best knowledge, competent individuals. But where the gap comes in, and Haley touched on this, is, to have a technical ready person that's got the knowledge, and yes, we touch a little bit on our students have their work integrated learning or vocational jobs. We talk about here, majority of students graduating currently from South African universities have a maximum of 8 weeks exposure to mining industry before they hit into the workspace. UNISA is the only university that does it quite differently, where they finish their degree and they have to complete 6 to 12 months in the industry before they can get their diploma. So that's the only university that has quite significant exposure before these young individuals enter the industry. Our other universities, due to the curriculum that is available and the vacation jobs that's available and the mining houses supporting from their side, our students get a very limited practical exposure to what mining is. But coming back to what Haley said is, technical knowledge and the part is one thing. How do you apply it in your workspaces? And your human component has always been a very large part and an important part, but it's going to be even more important as we move forward in the industry with everything that is being developed and innovative structures that's coming in with technology. And I think this is where our massive gap is. And this is what we see not only with the young individuals we train, but even in industry. We have fallen away on proper outcome-based programs on leadership development. And if I mention leadership development, I'm talking about all soft skills falling under leadership, your communication, your teamwork, your basic conflict handling. How do I manage myself? Time management. All these factors have significantly declined. And majority speaking about South African training, because we have always been ahead of training, but for some other reason, as the years went by, this is the first thing that's being cut in the mining houses, and that is a culture that's become into South Africa where we've not deemed our people development as important as it used to be. If we talk about Africa as a whole, they are quite behind in people development, but there's a lot of initiatives moving into, if you look at DRC and Zambia, there's amazing things that's starting to happen in these countries, still far behind, but at least it is starting to happen. So my gap in the readiness, and if I say the competency and the skills, is not so much in the knowledge part. The knowledge, the universities are doing a stellar job of making sure our students are knowledgeable and to be adapting, and I'm sure the curriculums will be adjusting to the new technologies that's being introduced into industry to prepare them for that. But where our gap comes is, what do I do now with that technical knowledge? What do I do with it, and how do I apply it? And even more so, now how do I apply it in a really fast-paced, dangerous, high-risk, complicated, sometimes toxic environments of mining industry? And this is specifically, if we speak to our clients and our partners, where the big problem comes in with our young people, and where the retention cannot be maintained because they're not coping, because they're not prepared and properly workplace readiness in terms of how do I handle now what I have, applying this in the industry in a very complex environment. So yes, to touch on with what Haley said, the human capital side it's always been important, but we need to really step up again and starting to close that gap in our development of our people.
Absolutely. Tony, I want to stay with you for a while because you're talking about soft skills development and how to go about creating leaders, managers, etc. Now, your company has created the Mine Mentor Exchange Program. And before you go on to explain what it's all about, I'd like our program director just to show the audience a short 1-minute video on the Mine Mentor Exchange Program. Tanya, these young people look like they're having so much fun. They're dancing, sitting around the fire. I mean, why wouldn't you want to work in the mining sector? But tell me about the Mine Mentorship, the Mine Mentor Exchange Program. How did it come about, and what are its objectives?
So there's actually a long story behind how it actually initiated. But a couple of years ago, because we work closely with the industry and operational level, so we do get to often be part of the PITs if we do frontline supervisor programs for some of the mining companies we've worked with. And throughout the years, we've seen the decline in the competency of the application side and specifically our people skills side of the young people coming in. And the second reason how it came about is the frustration regarding training in the mining industry and all the red tape and commercial and, you know, all these things that's very familiar and not new to speak about training in the industry. And I decided to take the program completely out of the mining houses, and the universities are partners with us, but Comodex now owns the program to say we can train on the level we want to train. We bring in specialists. We've got a stellar group of consultancy companies that partnered with us, OEM companies that partnered with us to put a program together where we focus on the students the year before they graduate. So currently we're focusing on our final year students from UP, WITS, and UJ. We've got a group selection throughout the 3 universities. And then recently we had UNISA also join. But if we talk about our traditional universities, so Tikkies, WITS, and UJ, which is full-time students, we've developed a 12-month program where while they're busy studying, we spend time with them at least once or twice a month doing active workshops specifically of what I've spoken about now. What are you busy learning and how do we apply it into our workspaces? We are very fortunate to be a partner of UJ and with their mock mine facility. We recently had a fantastic event and we are upgrading the mock mine as we go with our brilliant OEM partners and industry partners, bringing things into the mock mine which we can actually use to train the students on when we do not have availability to be on mining sites all the time. And more important, running parallel with this is the people development skills that we are doing in between. So not only focusing on the technical application and the hard part about what mining is, but how do I navigate this and building the skills of, if I can say, basic skills, presentation, how to present yourself, being confident in areas where you go. We invite our industry partners every time we have our events. We get mine managers, GMs, CEOs, where the students can directly interact. We saw in the video our last function, the OEMs. This is global companies that's behind us and busy supporting us and bringing their people to teach the students. And with UNISA, we've got a very unique partnership where, because their students have an entire year where they're not actively busy studying anymore, so we get a lot of time with them. And we developed a special program for them, and they're starting next week, where the first month they spent with us fully on the foundational safety training. We've got safety specialists that does all our safety training for our students, starting with their assessments. We measure behavioral patterns. They each get an IDP, so individual development plan, for that entire year. And then they'll move 3 months into one of our partner mines where they will be doing work integrated learning. After that, a month again with us, spending time at our OEM companies and their training facilities, again back with us, focusing on their IDP, working on what was happening in the mine. And then 3 months, and that rotation will continue until the year is done. By doing this, unfortunately, with the structure that we currently have with our university students, when they do vacation work or work integrated learning, they only get, majority of them only get an opportunity at one mine, one commodity, and then they go and move into graduate programs or internships or wherever they end up to them. But the problem with this is a lot of students only do a coal mine, but then they get a graduate program or a work position in a hard rock mine. So we're still sitting with that gap of the student doesn't really know what's going on or had exposure to this previously. So our goal with the Mine Mentor and what we've been doing successfully is making sure the students get exposure across all commodities. That includes small-scale mining, quarries, your OEM partners, your contractors, all the areas where you with your degree can feed into. And yes, I think, you know, we launched it last year in April. We've been busy just over a year, and the support we've been receiving from the industry and the feedback of students that we've placed that finished last year on the program, the feedback that we're getting of the standard of the students, because we also run it on an outcome-based program, so these students are constantly assessed. They have to retain 70% and above. They are evaluated by industry specialists in the training companies. And what also makes the Mine Mentor different is this was developed by specialists in the field. A lot of initiatives and mentorship programs are developed by good heart and good faith, and we want to drive these things. But there's a certain skill if you start doing and moving into skills development and skills transfer that not just anybody can do it. And I think we sit in a very fortunate position because we've got 30 years exposure and experience in training in the industry. Our partners are well on the same trends as what we are. We've got phenomenal relationships with all the universities, and we have the position where we're sitting with the direct link to the mining houses, is that we have information from all areas, not just feeding from one side. So we're constantly improving. We constantly know exactly what gaps is currently faced in specific areas. And yes, like you said, we're having a lot of fun. I think we've changed a lot of students' minds already about the concept of mining. We've helped a lot of students already who didn't know specifically where they want to be in mining to find what they're passionate about or what they would like to pursue. And yes, we are hoping within the next couple of years, we're already branching out to some of the rest of the African countries. They're on our heels to ask us when we're coming to roll it out there, and to move into our other engineering fields as well. The geologists, metallurgists, we've got some mechanical engineers already since last year on the program. And yes, we are bringing a broad program to make sure as much exposure into the industry on different levels, understanding the different departments in mining, and just making sure we can offer the industry a complete, competent individual to start their careers.
Thank you for that, Tanya. Haley, back to you. And, obviously we can't get away from the topic of technology. And this is also pertinent towards skills development and ongoing training. So can you tell me, with technologies such as virtual reality and simulation-based training, can it effectively replace traditional hands-on mining training?
So not replace, but certainly complement. So the stance we take at Immersive Technologies is that we don't view simulation or blended learning technologies like VR, augmented reality, e-learning content, etc., as substitutes for hands-on exposure. But where the value does come in is in terms of building confidence and efficiency in training programs. So one place where this value can be very clearly seen is in terms of reducing time for competence. So if we focus on supervisors or at an operational level, we have consistently demonstrated that you can use technologies like simulators to reduce the time to productivity for green operators, for example. Now, what this does is it helps to foster confidence in a safe learning environment before the individual goes out into operations. So here, operators or supervisors, if we're focusing on virtual reality, for example, are empowered to learn from their mistakes in a controlled environment where errors don't result in downtime or injury. They are opportunities for reflection, group discussion, and this really bolsters the safety in mining operations that invest in these types of technology. And in addition to this, there's also a cost save associated with getting these individuals upskilled in a more efficient manner. So it's not about removing hands-on training, but it definitely is about how we can supplement that process, build proficiency, and I think importantly for the operators is confidence when they go out into operations for the first time, that it doesn't feel like a foreign environment. So to Tanya's point around, individuals not getting a lot of exposure often, virtual reality simulation is a great opportunity to close those gaps for those individuals. The other thing to consider is that there are certain training objectives. If we think about emergency events or adverse operating conditions that you simply cannot give operators hands-on exposure to, or not in a safe manner at least. So this is the differentiator for simulation. in a simulator or a VR environment, you can train individuals to respond to emergency situations in that controlled environment and develop that muscle memory and familiarity with responding to those types of events. So if you think about something like a engine fire, or well, let's stick with an engine fire, is realistically you're not going to give someone hands-on exposure there. You're not going to set the equipment on fire. And going through that process in a classroom-based environment is not very effective, because I can understand the 5, 6, 7 steps required to respond to that event. But when I'm actually confronted with that scenario, do I have the confidence to respond? And that's really where the technology that we focus on comes in to complement that hands-on exposure that individuals will later receive.
Great stuff. Thank you very much for that, Haley. I'm looking on the right-hand side of my screen. I can see a flurry of audience questions that are coming in, and I will ask the panelists to answer them soon. But before I do that, Paseka, I want to come back to you. Talk to me about how partnerships between mining companies and educational institutions can be strengthened. And can you list any examples of success stories in this regard?
Yes, thank you for that. No, definitely. We are always engaging mining companies as the universities. One, we're looking for partnership in terms of bursary support for the students. It's challenging to undergo rigorous studying without sufficient adequate financial support. So we always looking for that relationship. And Tanya talked about exposure. So we're always looking for that exposure. We send on an annual basis. We collaborate with mining companies where we send our students to do exposure, which we call it a vacation work. Here we have university students going into different mines, and then there they experience all these various activities, including doing investigation report to solve some of the problems that the mines might have, using their the knowledge that they've acquired as they undertake their studies. And then on the postgraduate level, we also partner with the mining companies in terms of research, because we always want to have the research that is relevant and has an impact. And then the only way that you could do it is actually to be within that an environment where you really do your research, you go underground, you set up your experiments, you obtain your data, you come and analyze, and then you come in and then you do the validation, and then that's the only way that you can do it. And then we can only do that if we, through the collaboration with the mining companies. And then some of these projects, they do really save mines a lot of money. This project that the postgraduates are coming, including the undergraduate, as they do their investigation report.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, Paseka. I want to turn our attention to some of the audience questions right now. And audience, if you've got a question, just pop it into the comments channel, and we'll try our best to answer as many as we can in the remainder of our time. Tanya, a question for you. And, it is very commonplace in Africa that once one has the skills, then people move on to greener pastures, overseas in other more lucrative mining regions. So the question that's coming from the audience is, can African countries realistically retain talent without improving salaries, governance, research funding, and long-term career opportunities?
Sure. Well, if we look, and specifically in the areas where we do train, and a lot of training specialists would say that people don't stay for the money; they stay for the culture. And I think a big issue in South African industry mining is the culture. Some areas where we see, there's mines that does a stellar job in keeping their culture and their environment safe, and just you can see the people are very happy to work there. But that's in majority of the time not the case. And yes, you can definitely retain, because we've done specifically talking about South Africa and your talent. If we talk about 10, 15 years ago, we didn't have the issue that we were sitting with now, where everybody wanted to run to different countries or expat work in Africa because the salaries are triple the amounts. People were happy in their jobs and they were happy at the company. So what changed? It wasn't the salaries, it wasn't the amounts. It's mining's always been faced with the financial structure, and sometimes where mines goes through, they have to let go of people. But we currently if you walk onto majority of the mines in South Africa, the culture has changed a lot. People are not happy to be in mining. If you go to any conferences and you speak to anybody in general in mining, specifically now just speaking about South Africa, and you ask them how is it going, it's very rarely that we positive about the industry in South Africa. So I think we rely more, forgetting about the money and what we're offering people. The mindset we currently have in South Africa regarding our people and our workforces and how we're treating each other on the site is a very big problem. And this I can definitely vouch on, because majority of the time when we are phoned to South African mines to do training, it is to do culture changes. It is to look at disciplinary and behavioral changes. This is nothing to do with anything technical or looking at communities or these things. It is based on the people are unable to work with each other due to conflict or cultural differences, or really just workforce not getting along. And we've seen this in the DRC, the same thing. So I think we must exclude the point of not everybody's running towards money, but if you can be offered more money at a place in the same culture, of course you're going to take it. So we must start looking at what are we doing for our people to make sure, and a big one is skills development. People are not happy because they are feeling that there's nothing more that they can grow to. They're not offered skills development. If you sit and speak to people, and this again when we're in the operational levels, compared to 10 to 15 years ago, how actively South Africa was training and people were giving the skills to move up in their careers, it's not happening anymore. Again, few and far between mines are still really doing their job in doing this, but majority of our mines in South Africa is not partaking in skills development. Our young generation, they want to learn quick, they want to move fast. If you are not adapting to that ability to offer them the skills and manage them so that they can grow, they're going to move to a different company that can offer it for them. So I think this whole question regarding, not offering more salary, a bigger salary doesn't solve the culture. It's going to solve it for 3 months to 6 months, and then the same issue is still going to be there. We need to look deeper of why are our people leaving? Why do they not want to stay? What can we offer them that's not revolved in money, that we can make sure our skills are developed more, our people are happy, our people are safe. And majority of the mines, and this is now across Africa, not so much South Africa is a big problem. We've got a really, really big problem in South Africa, more so than in Africa. But yes, I think taking money out of the equation, we've lacking on severely on different skills development and keeping our people happy to make sure that we can retain these brilliant talent that we still have in South Africa.
Absolutely. Thank you. And interesting points that you've made there, Tanya. Hayley, let me bring you into the conversation here. And, this discussion is all about addressing the skill shortage in African mining. But let me put this to you. Can technology compensate for the lack of highly skilled labor, or does it increase the need for specialized skills?
So, in my experience, it doesn't compensate. It merely shifts the focus of your workforce. I think, particularly within the African context, there's a lot of anxiety about technology impacting job creation. particularly when you look at your less skilled workers. And that I see is often where a lot of the resistance to technological innovation and automation stems from. Now, something that we've just observed with some of our clients, and I mean, even internally, is that technological advancements, bringing in new processes, it doesn't necessarily replace jobs. It actually increases the need for diversified and specialized skills. And I think something that many people online today can relate to, and I've seen some of the comments in the chats around it as well, is concerns around things like autonomous hauling systems. There's often a lot of fear, I feel, about, will this hurt local communities? Will it result in fewer employment opportunities? And with the clients that we have seen implementing AHS systems globally, what they've seen is that it doesn't really result in a dramatic reduction in their workforce. Technology adoption actually results in new roles needing to be created. And I feel the trend will be very similar within our context. But what is important is that not all these roles are directly related to AHS or the technology that's being implemented. And this gives an opportunity for job creation that is focused on various job competencies. And this is where we can really bring communities in and diversify the skills that we're bringing in and reskill individuals. I think the complexity here, though, comes in with the need to upskill those individuals and having strategies to do so. And this is where the social responsibility in the mining industry really comes to the fore. And I feel that a lot of this actually needs to be addressed before tertiary education level. We need to be developing these capabilities much earlier on, so that by the time individuals enter tertiary education, they already have a strong foundation to respond to this. So I think the focus needs to shift from technology being a tool to compensate for a lack of skilled individuals in the workforce, and instead serve as a driver for upskilling individuals. And again, like I said, really from a grassroots level, we need to be able to contribute meaningfully, both from an individual level as well as an organizational level, in how these individuals engage with technology.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for that, Haley. Paseka, a question that is, you are probably most, you're the expert in this. And the question is, how willing are universities to adapt and align with QCTO changes in order to provide graduates with more practical exposure, considering that many university graduates tend to have less workplace experience compared to TVET students?
No, thank you. But Gerard, maybe perhaps allow me just to respond to something that Tanya mentioned.
Yeah.
When I look at our mining engineering student population here at Wits, when I look at UJ, and then I look at University of Pretoria, you're starting to see a lot of female students coming in and doing mining. For example, here at when I graduated, there was only one female student doing mining engineering in class. Now, the class is between almost 50% female students. Now, that tells you something. That tells you, and I don't think, student or people who put themselves in harm's way. The fact that you have this increasing number of females coming wanting to do mining, and then most of them are African, it tells you of the changes in the culture. There's a change in culture, and for me, the indication that a lot of African female students want to do mining, it is a positive change in the culture out there in the mining industry. And then when you look at senior position, there are now women ascending to managerial position in the mining companies, and then that is a positive change. And then I think because they are ascending into a managerial position, they are actually changing the culture to such that it becomes inclusive. Now, when you talk about answering your question, I would say broadly there's a willingness. When I graduated and then went into the mining industry, there was a department called training department that really would train us as graduates coming from the universities into the mining, and then they will help hold our hands and then go through up the ranks and then up to a point where you can really push your career. But over time, that has support has disappeared. Nowadays, there are no really training departments that will really hold the graduates' hands. You need to know that universities produce a person that is trainable, right? And then it is up to the host or the employer now to train this person, to train this person to and give him all the practical skills so that they become productive to that company. And Tanya has just mentioned that our role is to give them knowledge, and then, but we've seen this gap, and then that's why we partner with Commodex in terms of ensuring that as we educate these students, they really give them additional the skills so that they when they go into the mining industry, they are not really at loss. There's a little bit of experience. And I know that, the TVET, they would go there and then they would have a longer exposure time and then they would gain experience. But really, our universities, we produce students with certain graduate attributes as required by EXA. And then that takes time to ensure that we still that graduates that will speak to an engineer in the mining industry. But nonetheless, we are aware of this, and then we have partnered, of course, with the mining companies to give to train our students during VEC work, and then of course companies like Commodex to be able to in tandem with what we're doing to also give them a practical exposure and an experience. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And then, we're coming to probably the part I hate least about these webinar discussions, and that we're almost out of time. But before I ask the panelists for their closing remarks, I want to just highlight two comments that came in based on what Haley and Tanya, to your comments about the brain drain. And this comes from Kevin Rack, and he says, treat us with more respect, especially trades who make up a large part of the skill set. We leave not only for money, moreover, the Angler mine in Finland is really different to the Angler mine in RSA. So quite interesting there. And then Haley, I just want to scroll down to what somebody mentioned. There we go. This comes from Alred Quartzen, and they say, I agree with Haley that technology demands a change in engineer skill set. The question is, how well are the universities positioned to assist with postgraduate courses that are aligned with technology advancements? I suppose this is also something that's aimed at you, Paseka, in your role at the university. But we about 5 minutes away from closing this webinar. So what I'd like to do right now is I just want to go around the room and just allow each panelist 2 minutes to answer this question. how do we ensure that we can develop and retain skills in the African mining sector? And Paseka, I'd like to start with you, please.
Yes. Maybe let me just respond to the issue of the question of technology. We have in 2017 we changed our curriculum to align to 4IR, and now we within our curriculum we have we've incorporated big data analysis, programming, digital mine design, and so forth. So we've really realigned our program to this, to ensure that our graduates, when they leave, when they are immersed in an environment that is technology intensive, that they are not at lost. And then, of course, in terms of the postgraduate, we do develop bespoke programs that talks to changes in technology, and then that capacitate the professionals in an industry insofar as the technology environment or ecosystem is concerned. In terms of really alignment or ensuring that we retain the skills, there is, from my, when I scan the environment, from my knowledge, across various operations in Africa, there's really, we have a lot of South Africans out there, and then we have a lot of Africans in here, but really there's very little. I know in the 90s, early 2000s, there were a lot of Africans living and going in a different continents. But what I see now is there are a lot of professionals, African professionals, that are willing to stay within the African continent. I suppose is because of the improved working conditions that various mining companies, and these are multinationals, have created in terms of ensuring that people are as comfortable as possible within their operations. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much for that. Tonya, coming to you, just in 2 minutes, the very same question. How do we ensure that we can develop and retain skills in the African mining sector?
I'll break it in two. So for your commercial training or your professional training, if I can say so, train with intent. The programs that you implement in your companies, whether it's now in a mining house or OEM or supplying company, do it with intent. Make sure there's an outcome. Don't just do for the tick boxes and the compliances. Make sure the training that you implement in your companies are with intent and that there's proper outcome. And then for the young generation to start being involved. We've got plenty of initiatives running now in youth development. Mining houses needs to start stepping up, and I'm not talking just about the big mines. They are doing their part and they putting in a lot of investment in things. Our smaller mines, small scale quarries, OEM supplying companies, get involved, share your specialty and your expertise with us and our young people. There's a place for everybody in this industry, but as long as we're all just playing for ourselves, we're not going to move forward. So it's time to really start moving together and to create change in specifically our skills development across Africa.
Thank you very much for that. And finally, Hayley, your closing comments, please.
Sure. So I feel that the conversation today has really gone to the crux of the problem around learning curves and skills development within the African context. I think the real challenge isn't technology adoption, it's supporting people through rapid change. Educational systems need to shift from teaching jobs to supporting learners, people once they're in the workforce and communities to adapt and grow. The systems that we put in place need to start to equip people to adapt, not just perform tasks. So we think we've all seen it, roles are changing faster than formal qualifications can evolve. So education must help people understand how mining systems work and how to think through unfamiliar problems so that their skills remain relevant and fluid as the technology in our environment evolves. So when we start to look at training, to Tanya's point, it's not about a tick box activity, but how do we drive real change in these individuals and across the workforce that we interact with?
Thank you very much for that, Haley. And it seems like we've only just touched the surface of this important conversation. But unfortunately, we have come to the end of our discussion. So I'd like to thank our panelist, Dr. Paseka Liu, who's the head of school at the Wits School of Mining Engineering, Tanya Graham, Managing Director of Comodex Consultancy, and Haley Dady, the Global Training Services Manager at Immersive Technologies. And finally, to our audience, thank you for joining us today. Just a reminder, if we didn't get through your questions at this live webinar, I will be sending these questions through to the panelists and we will answer them. And you will find that content on miningreview.com. And remember, if you've missed any part of today's webinar, you can watch on demand at miningreview.com. Until next time, thank you and goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you.